All right, everybody. It looks like we still have a couple people coming in, but we might just get started and everyone will join us as usual. If you have any questions, please put that in the chat. All right, welcome to the In the Yards film screening and artist talk with Eileen Rosina and Grayson Fiske, and myself, I'm Krista Hanley, and I'm with the National Western Stock Show. And I'm really excited to do this. This is 2 years in the making of having this official screening for Eileen's video. So we're very excited that she could be here with us. All right, let me see how to forward. All right, so I'm gonna start by talking about the Stock Show Artist in Residence program and introducing myself a little bit in my role with the National Western Stock Show. So I'm gonna stop the share real quick so that you can see me. My name is Krista Hanley. I'm the coordinator of the Coors Western Art Show at the Stock Show. That means that I coordinate all of the related events to the art show, so the red carpet reception, the Young Guns event, and any other events that we do around the art show. And I started at the Stock Show in 2013, and this would have been my 8th Stock Show, so I added them up today. As you all know, this was an unusual Stock Show. It was postponed this year, but we were really excited that the Coors Art exhibit could take place online. So if you still want to look at some great art, the sale is open until tomorrow. So you can check out the art at CoorsWesternArt.com. And you'll get, oh my gosh, there's so much great art still available. So please do check that out before tomorrow night and buy some art. And as always, all of the events and the art sales for the Coors Art Show support the National Western Scholarship Trust, which is the scholarship trust that's part of the Stock Show that supports 100 students a year. Even this year, we are supporting 100 students with the scholarship trust. So that's really exciting to know that that trust is really healthy because people keep buying art. So we want you to keep doing that. A little bit about my background. I have a BFA in photography from the College of Santa Fe and a master's degree in gallery management from Western Colorado University. And I have over 20 years of experience as an art gallerist, an appraisal assistant, and a personal art collection curator. So I've got a big background in art. All right, and in when was it? I guess it was 2018, I started thinking about how we could bring even more art to the Stock Show. So we have the Coors Art exhibit, we have the Youth Art exhibit, and we have the National Western Club exhibit where there's art up there during the Stock Show, and I wanted even more art at the Stock Show. So I started thinking about how we could do an artist in residence program. Now, an artist in residence program is where artists get access to a venue in order to create work. Sometimes artist in residence programs are where artists have studios and they have places to live and they can live and work on a site like a ranch. And then sometimes artist in residence programs are at venues like airports, the Mall of America, Amtrak trains. They've all had artist in residence programs where artists have created work on site. And that was my idea for this program, is to encourage artists, especially ones doing really different mediums than what we showcased in the Coors Art exhibit, to have them come to the Stock Show and experience the place that is the Stock Show. And as you know, it's like quite an unusual and rich environment in which perhaps it can influence an artist in order to create. So I developed that program, and the very first artist that we asked to be the resident artist was Eileen Rosina, who is a filmmaker. And she's currently lives in Denver and earned her BFA from Emerson College in Boston, Massachusetts, and is currently an MFA candidate at the University of Colorado Boulder. She's exhibited film internationally, completed artist residencies for the National Western Stock Show, Redline Contemporary Art Center in Denver, which has a great artist in residence program, and the Salina Arts Center in Kansas. Eileen is represented by Walker Fine Art Gallery in Denver, so you can go and check out her work at Walker Fine Art. Now, Grayson Fiske did the sound design for the film that we're going to watch, and so I'm going to introduce him here too, and we're glad that he's with us as well. Grayson is from Denver, and he's a composer and percussionist. He works primarily with percussion and found sound. So that really ties into that stock show experience. He's earned his master's degree in percussion performance at the University of Oregon. And Grayson's playing and compositions can be heard on the recordings of Human, Ottoman, and Three for Silver. And if you want more information, I'm going to have both of you, if you have websites, put that into the chat so that people can look at your websites. So we are just really excited. I want to talk a little bit more about the Artist in Residence program, and I'm going to share my screen again. All right, so we had Eileen, who started us off in 2019, who's a filmmaker, and she created this great film that we're going to watch and learn more about. In 2020, we had an artist named Sarah Wallace Scott, who is a mixed media paper sculptor who used found things that she found at the stock show and created work there at the stock show. And then, of course, this year it was postponed. So we hope that next year we will have the opportunity to have another artist. So I thought it'd be fun to show you all some pictures of our artists in residence. So here's Eileen in the yards in action. Here's another one looking down on the yards, which of course in 2019, the yards were the old configuration, and that is going to be changed in the next show, so that this is really a document of the historic yards. All right, and here's Sarah Wallace Scott last year doing these paper mache sculptures that turned into planters. And she's really interested in soil health, which is a great fit for the stock show and especially the future National Western Center. All right, I already introduced you. All right, so we're gonna watch the film. I just want to ask Eileen and Grayson, do you have anything to add before we watch the film that people should look for?
Sure. One thing, I just wanted to say, hey, and welcome to everyone. It's so lovely.
Sorry, I just went so fast.
I know. It's just been a long time in the making, and I'm so glad we finally get to show the film to the world. One thing to note is that the film does start silent, so don't be alarmed if you're like, where's the audio? Like it comes in several minutes in, so just make sure your audio is on, and the sound will come in later.
Stock Show and Rodeo. Folks, you're going to see history, color, heritage, flamboyance, a lot of great music, dancers, and so much more. Are you having fun?
All right. It's 4:40, so we're going to get started. I am going to start this off with Eileen. I am so excited that you were able to do the residency program, be our first artist in residence. So I wanted you to talk a little bit about why you wanted to be a stock show artist in residence. Your film looks like you might be frozen.
Hopefully I'm not too frozen and you can hear me. Maybe my internet will catch back up. But, thank you so much for coming, everyone. And it was such an honor to be the inaugural resident of the National Western Stock Show. It's such an iconic Denver institution and event, and something that I grew up with. So frankly, it had a lot to do with nostalgia for me and wanting to really convey that through a film project. And, it's kind of a wild idea. It's like, be the resident of the stock show. Like, there's so many different directions you can go with that. And the Coors art was something that I always really enjoyed going to as one of my highlights. It's just kind of like this solace zone of quiet, a little bit of a break from the crowds. And so, I'm so glad that Krista wanted to bring more contemporary art to the stock show. My art doesn't maybe necessarily fit within the model of the Western art. But, it's really great to expand and, widen the audience and see where filmmakers and artists like me can take it.
So it was great that you wanted to take this on. What was the experience like to film at the stock show? And then I'd love for you to talk about the process, because you were not using a digital camera. And sometimes people don't realize how much work it takes to film with film. So talk about that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, when I was first kind of thinking of how I wanted to approach the residency, I knew I wanted to make a film, to kind of do some kind of documentation. And when I learned that the yards were going to be changing the year afterwards, I thought it was such a good opportunity to kind of document them as they had been for, over a century, really. This is a really historical place in Denver. Even thinking back to like 1881 was on the Denver Union Stockyards where the company was formed. And it wasn't until 1906 when the formal stock show started to meet on the outskirts of Denver, which is funny to think that where the stock show is now, it's considered the very far reaches of Denver. But there's so much history to those yards specifically. And, I think that's kind of how the stock show started in so many ways. And so I thought it was very important to kind of document them as they had been, or as they were in 2019 during the show. And so I started to come to the yards for weeks before the stock show started and hang out and film. One of the things that the kind of story I wanted to tell in the film was this kind of arc of the yards as a life force, right? So they're kind of dormant and quiet for 11 months of the year. And then boom, for those 60 days in January, it is wild beyond belief. And it's kind of a slow start, and people start to load in and set up, and it's just this really beautiful arc. And then afterwards it's just the same, because people leave, clean up, and there's debris and trash, and then it's back to quiet and nothing. And so I was there before the show started, and then I was there for weeks after the show started and filming. And the experience of being there every day during the stock show was it was a little bit overwhelming. The crowds definitely started to get to me. It was a lot, and it's so funny to think about that now. During the pandemic, how wow, the crowds were insane. So, trying to like do the time lapses of just the volume of people and all of the different creatures and things that happen in the yards themselves. But I was shooting on, this whole film was shot on 16 millimeter film. I think in the first slide, Krista has a sweet picture of me filming with my Bolex, which is a spring wound camera that's just shoots like 2.5 minutes of film at a time. And I used a variety of film stocks, black and white, color. I did some of it hand processed, so that's kind of why you get that like kind of gritty, like abstract feel in some of the parts. But it was really fun to walk around the yards with my Bolex. It was a true conversation starter. People would stop me and be like, "Oh, I used to shoot on that camera," or like, "What are you doing? You're making a movie." And then I'd be able to talk about my project and talk about the artist residency program. And it was a really good icebreaker for a lot of things. And a lot of the time I would just be like hanging out with a cow, waiting for it to stand up for like an hour, and it was a lot of waiting, and it was a lot of like fly on the wall approach. I didn't want to be involved. I kind of just wanted to witness the magic of that place. Like there's such, my parents took us to the stock show every year. Sometimes much to my dismay, I didn't want to go all the time, but in retrospect, I love it so much, and there's so much nostalgia, and especially this year having it postponed, I think we're all kind of like really missing it in some ways, and it's one of the few places I think in my life where I can like just even like really recall the smell of the stock show, like just close my eyes and like I know exactly how it sounds, I know exactly how it smells, and all of these sensations are so deeply embedded. And I think pretty much anyone that's from Denver, like, you have to go once to the stock show just to know. Everyone's required to to at least know what it is, just because it is so important for, the economic growth. It really, early days, it really was like a huge capital infusion to the tourist economy, like in the early 1900s, and really celebrated. Even like, I think like in the first stock show, like 1906, they like dedicated a whole day and like canceled school and closed the banks, and like everyone went to the stock show. So it's always been something that's really celebrated in Denver. So that was a long-winded answer. And I love her.
I want to loop Grayson in here, and I will spotlight him as well, so you'll both be up. So you talked about the narrative arc of the film and how it sort of, the yards start off empty, and then they fill up, and then they keep filling with animals and people, and they change, and then they become empty again. So that was very clear, and I saw that really reflected in the sound design as well. So I was thinking, Eileen, if you want to talk about, like, I know you did some of the sound recordings. Did you have a thought about what the sound design would be like at the end? And then how did you and Grayson work out how it ended up?
Yeah, I recorded on site a lot of sound. I would just leave my recorder running in a place for like many minutes at a time, or like take it into the rodeo or the auctioneers. I gave all of those sounds to Grayson. And, the way that I make films, I typically don't like plan a whole lot in advance. I kind of cast a wide net and then like kind of re-examine what I have after the fact. And I gave a lot of those sounds to Grayson, and Grayson and I did go back to the yards and do some on-site recording after the fact. But to be honest with you, he took this in a direction that was so unique and just really blew my mind. And I'd love for him to talk a little bit more about his process and sifting through my hours of audio and, writing these original compositions. And we had collaborated on a film in 2018, and I was so thrilled with how that came out. And so yeah, I asked him to join this project again.
Yeah, like Eileen said, I got the several, like the hours of ambient recordings of what was going on in all the different zones of what the stock show is, and did a lot of deep listening and I do a lot of projects like taking that kind of audio where it's kind of banal, just looking at it without sifting through it and like finding those really kind of magical moments. Is I came to the stock show project like very much from an outsider's perspective. Like I've only been able to go one time before a few years ago, but something that I noticed about it, and I try and notice about like any activity that I'm an outsider to, is like when people are like exercising a ritual that's really important to them and like trying to draw some commonality between the different way people like engage in their own ritualistic activity, and just, I don't know, tried to take all those little parts and pieces and arrange them in our big narrative arc of like stillness to maximum activity and then bringing it all the way back down to stillness again. But yeah, if you do more close listening or anything, like I was very intentional with like kind of eavesdropped conversations of people, like funny moments between people, and just like real expressions of people being like just having a joyful moment in the stockyards. It's like, I don't know, from my perspective, like that's what I was seeing all the time, was just people being genuinely happy, like participating in the stock show, and just trying to put that on full display. That's kind of my aim.
Grayson, can you talk about how you use your audio clips to compose the music? Like, for example, the train or the last.
Yeah. So somewhere in there, yeah. So a train is kind of like a percussionist's dream thing anyways. But then Eileen had captured some really great audio of that like let me make some rhythms that I wouldn't have done any other way, like aside from finding these, and just chopped up all the different sounds that particular train makes and bringing it all together into basically a drum set, and doing that. And then there's the part later on with the auctioneer, where it's starting on a continuous loop of the same like 10-second clip of him doing that, and then slowly affecting that and taking it into that dreamlike state that happens a few minutes into that part. But really just always trying to keep an ear out for like even little moments. At the beginning of the film, like one of the first sounds you hear is the sound of a rusty gate opening and closing, and that had a really tonal component to it, and that's taking those exact notes and then putting them at the vibraphone, that bell-like instrument at the end of the film, and improvising and like coming up with different iterations of that same rhythm and like tonal content, and just trying to like put that magic that Eileen was talking about that the stock show has just into an audio context, but drawing directly from the sounds you hear in the yard.
So I was thinking about, as I watched it, that there is this combination of the found clips where they seem like they're fresh and right there, like what it would have sounded like. And then there's some where they merge into these sound compositions. And then at the end, there's this very dreamlike sort of composition and sequence. And I was just wondering if you could talk more about that end sequence and what your influences were with it.
Yeah. 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 I mean, really, it's like a lot of the video clips in that particular part of the big narrative arc is just like we're coming down from like peak excitement, like the crowd's kind of dissipated, and who's left in those moments are like the people that are actually making the show happen. And you see like those, like that sort of tender moment between the one guy in the Bear Creek Ranch shirt, like literally hugging the cow and like taking care of it and pampering it. And it's just like, I don't know, it's a whole production to put on this thing, but at the core of it is people that are just exercising this magical ritual and like really are devoting their whole life to that. And there's like just a certain like magic to that. And that's like what I was trying to capture, because that's when Eileen was first showing me the video from this, like that one in particular stuck out to me. And we had a whole conversation about it. It's like, that particular clip is really like the heart of what it is. It's like ranchers and everybody like devoting their whole life like kind of to this event and similar ones to it. So I don't know, not always the easiest thing to put into coherent words, but
yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I think I had asked you to, that I wanted a piece of music that was kind of almost like a dreamlike state, or like something that was really kind of reflective of like nostalgia. You have this like peak excitement, and then you kind of like this like slow, like almost like come down of like, the excitement, and it's like the day after Christmas or something, like just like, oh, like you're, reminiscing of all the events of the stock show. And I think you did that so well with using the gate sound and everything. But yeah, that one shot of the cow like standing up and their caretakers, like, I mean, I just witnessed so many tender moments between, this human and animal relationships. And, that is really what it comes down to.
Yeah. That, and like, we wanted to like really like capture the nostalgia, because the stock show's it's still very historic, but it's not ever really going to be the same now that it's been updated. And just trying to capture like the sense of like the pride in all of that history, but not like a farewell, but more of a like, here's where we're going.
Yeah, that's a really good transition into what I was going to ask Eileen next, is about that theme of nostalgia and recognizing history while also moving forward in the context of the National Western Center. Do you have any thoughts about this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's, that was kind of like my whole thought behind, this project specifically was to kind of capture, not the full spectrum of all what happens in the yards, but just like what I saw that year, and there's so much more that happens. I didn't witness, there's a lot happening there, and there's waves of different kinds of animals that come in and people and events. And, I got lucky with some shots, and I hung out long enough to see quite a bit of action. But yeah, with the new National Western Center, and there's a lot of changes on the horizon for the stock show for the better. It's really exciting. And I mean, I think it's going to, bring in a lot more to offer for a lot more people, but there is something really special about just documenting something as it has been up on the catwalks. And, I remember walking around with the archivist of the stock show, and, him showing me like the different brick patterns on the ground or the different hinges of the gates. And like, there's just layers and layers of history there if you really start to look. And it's kind of just been like kind of not hodgepodge added on, but in some ways, maybe that is the case. And so I just wanted to kind of, it was just a glimpse of a moment. And I hope that, this can be maybe archived, and people 100 years from now can watch this film and say, wow, that's what it was like in 2019. Like, what a crazy world. And to see this, just the humanity, you know, that happens in those yards. So yeah, I think, you know, and I love to go to the yards, like in the off season. I was telling Krista, I'm like, I don't know if that was okay, but I love like going there, like in the middle of the year. It's like so quiet, and it has a great view of the mountains. And it's kind of just this little like hidden gem that I used to like to go and just kind of hang out and clear my head and walk around in. So yeah, you know, I mean, I think it's in for city kids, it's like the first time that I ever saw a cow, or like that I ever saw like a chicken or a rabbit, you know. I mean, I didn't grow up on a farm, and I learned so much about the West and about ranching and, you know, our heritage and at the stock show. So I think it's really important to note that.
That's great. Thank you. Do you want to talk about this question that we got? Why did you decide to use color, and how did you choose when to use black and white and when to use color shots?
Yeah, this might be a little bit reflective of like my love of The Wizard of Oz, but like, you know, like this, when it kind of comes to life, like I chose to use color kind of like in the middle portions of the film. You know, you start in black and white and you maybe think it's kind of like a simple place, you know, and a simple view. And then all of a sudden it's like, it really blossoms. And to me, the color was used as a reflection of like the life that was in the stock, in the yards at the moment. So it's kind of this way. And then it ends again with black and white. So it's kind of this following the arc, like I had talked about.
Well, that's great. And then you have that time lapse sequence right in the almost right in the middle. Do you want to talk about how was that to shoot? Did you like put your camera on a tripod, you know, in these places? Did you plan out the shots ahead of time? How did that work?
Yeah, that was one of my favorite things to shoot. You know, it was like I was getting on like the roof, like people were helping me, like handing me my camera. Like I was kind of accessing all these unusual places because I had a badge. I was like, I'm media, like I can do this. But I don't have like a motor for my bullet, so I was literally like timing like one frame, you know, like that was all by hand and kind of, I don't know. It was a meditative experience to just do that by hand. And I did have to use a tripod. You know, you don't want to move your camera or change the frame when you're doing a time lapse to make it effective. And so there's some really funny moments. If you go back and watch the time lapse, like one of my favorites is like this one fellow who just kind of like stops in the middle and he's just kind of staring off into space and like everything's happening around him. And you would have thought that I would have paid him to do that, but like, no, he was just doing that. And so many incredible like people, you know, stopping to take pictures in these conversations. And I think it really kind of captures the energy and yeah, that was the hardest part to really execute. Yeah.
Yeah, there's this sequence where there's like, I think one man standing and then another man joins him and starts talking to him, and then the group gets bigger, and meanwhile there's all this activity around them, and you can just see how they're, you know, this is their thing. They talk to each other right in the midst of the yards. Yeah, that's great. That's great. That was one of my favorite parts of the film is that time lapse and looking down on the, I don't know, the underpass area when all those people just are going back and forth between the grounds and the yards. It's really great. So you talked a little bit about how, you know, there's all these animals and there's all these other things that happen at the stock show, but you really focus on the cattle and you focused on the yards. I just wondered if you want to speak to that you didn't film the, you know, the bison come in and you know, there's llamas at the stock show and there's sheep and there's, you know, not all of them are in the yards, but you could have done so many other kinds of animals. So what was your focus with that?
Yeah, I think I just wanted to stay really out in the yard specifically. I didn't do any filming inside. and I did a little bit of filming with bison, but yeah, I didn't, there was probably some animals that came in that I didn't see. But the longhorns come in towards the end, and the yak, and the bison as well. And I think I just wanted to stay really focused on this one specific physical area of just on this side of the underpass where the train is, and really just kind of limit myself to try to get and to get more shots. And some of the things I witnessed were so funny, like that lady, how they have the brochures of all the cattle with they're looking straight. So someone, that lady's with the bag, trying to get the cow's attention, and just those moments that you never never see otherwise. Or they come in so beautifully groomed, but it takes 4 people with blow dryers and a razor. I called it the cow barber shop. It really was a salon out there. I found that was so endlessly funny from an outsider's view, just wow, how the attention to detail with their haircuts. And I mean, I don't groom myself that well.
No, none of us would blow dry as long as I blow dry those cows. Oh man. I'm just gonna ask both of you what your artistic influences are. So Grayson, if you want to start, do you have visual or sound or movies, any kind of artistic influences?
Yeah, well, a little bit from everything. I'm a big fan of Cubism in general, both visually and music-wise, and some fellow music nerds will probably pick up on the minimalist influences in this, definitely drawing from Philip Glass and Steve Reich, but also just every other musical situation I play with a folk-ish band called 3 for Silver, and Lucas Warford is actually the bassist from the band, is actually the person playing bass in here. So anytime I do a project like this, I'm kind of drawing from all styles. There's definitely the country influence in there intentionally, and then even the vibraphone playing in the dreamlike sequence at the end is pulling from jazz harmony. And I don't know, I really I don't so much pull from one place in particular, but I just find the magic in any genre, both visually and musically, and just kind of curate what I want to do that way. But yeah.
Thank you. Eileen, what are your influences?
Yeah, I am influenced by the experimental and avant-garde film legacy. I got my undergrad in film, and I've been making short experimental films for a long time. And when I thought about this film, I knew it wasn't going to be where I was interviewing people and kind of more of a traditional documentary approach. So, I mean, in some ways, this film is fairly abstract. There is, there's not really a firm narrative, there's not a cast, there's no dialogue really beyond what was Grayson used as the clips. And so, that's one of my big influences. And then I'm influenced just by working with nature and light. My art practice spans beyond film. I work in sculpture and installation, and I work with a lot of natural materials and in illustration as well. So I really kind of take cues from the natural world itself, and I often say I collaborate with nature and light, and so I'm heavily influenced by those things.
Great, thank you so much. And this is also for both of you to answer. I want to know what you're doing now, what projects you're doing that you're really excited about, and maybe, talk about this past year and how the pandemic has influenced your art making and your lives in regards to art.
this has been such a crazy year to be an artist, and with all the cancellations and just not knowing, if there'll ever be funding again, or people aren't, buying art like they had been before. And it was just a lot of uncertainty. And at first, at the very beginning of the pandemic, I was like, oh, I have so much time now, I can make art. And that was definitely not what happened. I was very unfocused, and, it was a little unsure of how to have objective distance about the pandemic. We're in it, we're still in it. And over time, I've started to get back into making. And so right now I have 2 shows up. I have one at Walker Fine Art. I have some cyanotypes on display. And I also have a big willow sculpture at the Arvada Center and their woodwork show. So those are both up through at least the next month. So if you're interested in learning more about my work, I will put my website in the chat so you can find more. But as Krista said, I just started grad school. So after an 11-year hiatus, I'm back earning my MFA. So I'm so thrilled to be back in school and learning again and have the resources of a university. So I'm really looking forward to making some new work. I've kind of stopped a lot of projects to kind of make time it's kind of a nice time to reset. And really this pause has been really good for my creative practice.
Yeah, I just want to interject there that Eileen, although she has this degree in film, she is so multi-talented. She does printmaking and sculpture. And I don't know, Eileen, the cyanotypes sound like a photographic method, maybe. So you're use so many different media in your work. What are you focusing on in grad school, or have you decided yet what you're focusing?
Yeah, I actually am back in the film concentration. So I, even though I do work in sculpture installation and all that, I think my strength is in film, and that's where my background is. And I think that's where I have the most growing to do as well. So that's what I'll be up to. So keep your ears peeled. And I did not put the right website on. I'm going to retype that. I forgot the A. So ignore that one
asking you questions while you're typing.
Yeah, no, I should have just been listening. And then, on Instagram, I'm Eileen Rosina as well. So you can find me there. Stay in touch. Thank you.
Grayson, what are you up to, and how has the pandemic changed or not changed your artistic life?
Yeah, so primarily what I do is tour. So pandemic definitely put an immediate stop to that. But I really was trying to make this year more of a year of a chance to put energy back into the practice of the craft of music making and try and expand my skills. And at the end of the year, I felt like I hadn't really done anything, but then really starting to go through it. I was actually still really privileged and fortunate to get to work with some really great fellow artists. Most recently, I scored another Denver artist named Mary Grace Bernard, doing a series of short films with her, using only gong in some interesting ways. And then I was part of a worldwide collaboration on some semi-activist, semi-protest music with an artist named Elena Shiren, who's originally from Austria, but now living in San Francisco. And I don't know, just mostly trying to build my own infrastructure in the absence of what's usually available to a musician. But yeah, I'm also new to Denver, so at this point, just trying to put my feelers out and connect with a whole new set of artists and see what kind of cool collaborations I can be a part of in the future here.
Where did you come from?
Portland, Oregon.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, wow. So it sounds like both of you are making do with this really different and changed world that we're in. Eileen, do you want to speak to the question that just came up from Claire? I don't know if you can see it or if I should read it.
Yeah, no, I can see it. So this is the world premiere of this film. So people were lucky enough to be present, a little different than maybe we had thought originally, but now it is out in the world. And so I would, love for this to possibly be playing for people at the stock show someday, maybe on a video monitor, or maybe, as I said, maybe it can live in the archives, or who knows. But so no, it wasn't playing for anyone else. I did have a little bit of an installation at the stock show. So when you were coming up the second floor.
From the north lobby up to the third floor.
Third floor. Thank you, Krista. I had some willow baskets and some illustrations on display as well. So it was a cool, and it had actually a poster with my face on it, which was kind of funny, but it was a way to talk about the residency program. And it was if you see Eileen out there with her camera, that's what she's doing. And so it was a cool little installation. And so, yeah, so that's what happened during the show beyond me being out in the yards.
Yeah, our artist in 2020, she set up a table there at the top of the stairs. So coming up from the north lobby up to the third floor, which is the kids area, we have the little alcove right across from the entrance to the that little sort of bar restaurant that's on the third floor that they use for private events. And so the 2020 artist, she set up a table there and she worked a lot of hours there just at that table, so people would come by and pause and look at her work there. So it's really exciting to have artists creating on site, even though I can imagine that sometimes it was a little bit too crowded. All right, so there's another question here. I muted myself, about how future attendees would potentially be able to experience the film and how it will be integrated into the stock show. So what our hope is that the new plans for the stock show include a legacy building, which is, and I'm gonna I'm going to pause here and put myself on the screen as well so you can see me. So the future stock show yards have a legacy building that they are raising funds for in order to build a building that is solely part of the National Western Stock Show. Because as you may or may not know, the city is running a lot of the National Western Center. So they wanted a building for our offices, for the permanent art collection of the art that we've collected over the last 26 years of the Coors Art Show, and then for the archives. And so there's going to be a whole area and gallery for the archives. And I think there's plans for a little theater, maybe a 10-person theater in that archive gallery. And so what my hope is that this film will be on that option, that contemporary museums, you can go in and sort of put some headphones on and pick which movie. What I'm hoping is they'll have a loop or some way that you can pick if you want to watch, maybe they'll have some other films about the history of the stock show, and then, do you want to watch Eileen's film? And you would click yes, and you'd have that whole film playing. That's our hope. Right now it is in the archives, so our archivist has it, but what we really hope that they utilize it in the future in the legacy building. Eileen and I might brainstorm about other ways that it can be used until we have the legacy building. But right now it's, as you know, we're sort of limited in buildings, and thus the need for new buildings. So we'll see how that works out. And maybe we can do an in-person showing in the future. That would be really nice. That's what we had hoped to do, but we had to make do as everyone. I hope that answered the question, and please, Eileen, do you have anything to add to that?
No, that's a thoughtful question. And, I hope that, we can maybe talk about another in-person screening someday. But, for now, the film will live on that Vimeo link that Krista had posted in the chat earlier. So please rewatch it. If you didn't get a chance to watch it or you had issues with your audio for any reason, it's just going to be there for a while. So please enjoy and feel free to share.
Yeah, and if you didn't get a chance to watch the film with headphones or like nicer speakers, like do take the chance to do that, because there's a lot of really subtle but intentional production things that kind of get lost on the typical computer or laptop speakers.
Yeah, and if you have a chance, watch the film again. I've watched it now, I don't know, maybe a dozen times. And you get something else from it every time you watch. From the sound, from the visuals, you can focus on something else. It's really a nice film to keep watching, especially because we didn't have a stock show this year, and it's very nostalgic toward the stock show, and it makes me gives me some hope that this time next year we'll be finishing up a very successful in-person stock show. So we're going to wrap up pretty quickly. I just wanted to know if either of you have anything else to add or to mention. And then if anyone has any last questions, please do put that in the chat.
I would just like to thank Krista specifically and personally. She is the one that really conceived of the residency program and has been my personal advocate for this film against, a lot of big people, in the stock show. And just, I'm so grateful for your vision, and I hope you can be persistent, and, we're going to do great things. So, but thank you for all your hard work on this. I know you just do this out of the love of art, and I'm very grateful. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and my thanks to you also, Krista, for having me a part of this, and to Eileen for tapping me to be the composer for her film. And thank you to everybody in the audience that took the time to come and see what we made.
Awesome. All right. If there's no last minute questions, I think we could wind down now. But you can ask those questions if you have them. We can hang out for a couple of minutes. Otherwise, I really appreciate everyone who joined us. This was a long time in coming, and we really, I'm just so thrilled that so many people stayed to watch, even though our technology wasn't perfect. We will have a replay of this, or that recording of this talk on our website, and we'll probably pop the video in so that you can watch the video sort of in there. So do watch CoorsWesternArt.com. They're being posted on the catalogs page. And so you can go to that website and also buy some art on CoorsWesternArt.com. The show ends on Sunday, so that's tomorrow. And we really appreciate all of your support, and we look forward to the 2022 stock show. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we got some great comments coming up here. Thank you so much, everyone. I see a hand raised. Feel free to type your questions in. So this comment, the sequence with the cows was so poignant, especially with the music. This was interesting because we often desensitize ourselves from our food systems, including animals. but the owners obviously bridged this dichotomy. Was this an intentional point?
I don't know if it was necessarily intentional, but I think it's something that just can't be overlooked, just given the nature of the stock show and the relationships that these ranchers have with their livestock. So yeah, absolutely. And I think that's at the forefront of everyone's mind there in a lot of ways. Definitely something that's not swept under the rug at the show itself. I mean, it's like everyone understands that, but I don't think I specifically intended that point in my film, but I'm glad that was a really nice reading of that. So thanks, Tasha.
Yeah.
And Jenny's got her hand up, so I'm going to Jenny. Let's see. I'm going to allow you to talk. So unmute yourself and you could ask your question, Jenny, if you had a question.
Well, I just wanted to know if they noticed my comment about the black and white giving the film a feeling of capturing more than recent time, because I think it did, because it's kind of a timeless event in many ways. And that's what I liked about it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that point. I'm glad that came through in the work, because we definitely had conversations about how historic this whole thing is and trying to represent that in whatever way we could.
Thank you, Jenny. Yeah, that's great. I didn't see that comment actually, so I'm glad you did raise your hand. And you know that it is kind of a timeless event. And if you do look at this film, there's not a whole lot of signifiers that are like, oh, that's definitely like 2019. You know, I mean, there's some tractors and maybe some cars that you could see, but the whole, and maybe the fashion, of course, right? You could definitely tell that. Yeah. But yeah, there is something timeless about the yards and just the people with the animals. So thank you for that.
Well, especially when you were filming the part where the woman was trying to get the stock's attention and she was shaking the bag. I mean, that could have been taken any time. And I'd never seen that activity there. So that made me chuckle.
It's a funny little side. Yeah, that's a behind the scenes view that you'll probably never get to see anywhere else.
And the little girl throwing the hay around or whatever she was doing. Yeah. She was sitting by the fence and she was kind of tossing things around.
Yeah, that is definitely timeless. That is one of my favorite sequences.
I also liked the two people with their heads together too, where they were like they were having a mind meld or something. They just had their heads together.
Yes, I love that shot too. Yeah, the little girl, I think that might be my favorite shot, just because I think she captures something so precious about, and I was so far away from her and she obviously didn't know I was filming her. And it was just so sweet to witness that moment. So thanks for noticing all these things, Jenny. Appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, my husband and I went through one day and took a lot of pictures when it was empty because you mentioned all the gates and the latches and all the hardware. We took a lot of pictures of that because we knew it was all going to disappear. So I'm glad we were able to capture some of that too.
That's great, Jenny. Yeah, I think they're going to recycle a lot of that. I think our archivist actually had piles of stuff that he was keeping, and hopefully in the design of the legacy building, they'll be reusing some of the lumber and the hardware and the gates and stuff and the bricks.
Yeah. So is that a new picture behind you, Eileen? Because it looks like the new setup.
This is just a still from the film itself. So this is just the yards as they were in 2019. And, this was before, so they look nice and clean. And
okay.
There's just a little bit of snow on the ground. We did have pretty decent weather. I think there was one time I was out there with freezing snow filming, but yeah, it wasn't too bad that year.
Well, it's weird because you look at some of those buildings and they're all gone now, like that white building across the street that's gone. So it's interesting to see all that. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We're going to to get going now, but we really appreciate Eileen and Grayson so much for being here, and we'll look forward to hopefully doing something in person.